Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining us tonight is Margaret Behrns. She is the founder and director of a program called Walk in My Shoes, which has been around since 2015. And as often I will tell you on the show, I discover nonprofits every day and wonder how in the world I have not heard of them before now. But Margaret is with us now, and welcome, Margaret, to Your Need
Thank
to
you.
Know.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So what prompted this is a mutual friend, actually your vice president, which is Joanne Walton. And Joanne is wonderful. She's introduced me to many people over the years, including to SEPTA, the Special Education PTA. We've done a show with SEPTA years ago now here on Your Need to Know. And they figure as one of your collaborators in this program designed to build empathy in young children to understand their classmates who may have a variety of different kinds of challenges. So give us some background on how you came up with this idea and how it has evolved over the past 7 years.
Well, I did not come up with this idea. This idea of going from station to station and teaching empathy is something that I walked in on when I was the special education parent liaison at my daughter's school years ago. A friend invited me to come to an autism awareness event at her school. And I just was blown away and lit up by this concept of teaching kids how to be empathetic to other kids. And I had been the special education parent liaison for a while and not really found that the parents were coming to me for very many questions or having a lot of needs that I could fulfill. But I did see that the general education students at the school had a lot of needs that we could address. So I brought the concept to my administration at my daughter's school, and they were wonderful. They added all sorts of components that really filled it out into what I believe has become a very comprehensive program. So very organically, they offered pre-teaching in the days prior to the event or intervention. And that included ideas for morning meeting, and the librarian would pull wonderful books that she would pass out to the teachers so that the children were primed for experiencing the conversations that they would have at the activity stations. And then they also organically had the counseling team come in and debrief after the event. And that team has been incredibly valuable because they have noticed for me, since I'm not in the school, that the effects of the program were long lasting and that kids were mentioning it throughout the year and in following years. And so I think that by having several grades at a time experience this program in a school and having the benefit of those debriefing conversations with the counselors, it just became this amazing thing that drew observers from other schools, which prompted me to write it up. And so that's how it started spreading.
And so in 2015, it became Walk in My Shoes.
Yes.
And you are a 501c3. What really impressed me when I looked at your website is you have quite the core of youth ambassadors. And mostly young women in your youth ambassador program are now in like 10th grade. They're in high school and they went through this program when they were younger in elementary school. And just to sort of back up your idea that became a lens through which they experienced their life, not just academic, not just being in school. It's a lens through which you learn to be empathetic about other human beings and to how you look at other people as you move through the world. And I was so impressed that these young women have stayed with your program and have helped to do the outreach so that people understand what this program is designed to do. You're now not only in elementary schools where you started, you're in middle schools, you're in high school, you are in 3 states, you are in 2 countries. So that's a lot to accomplish in 7 years.
Thank you very much. Those girls are very impressive. And I think one of the things that I'd like to just shout out to them is that they came to me right before all the schools shut down, asking if they could volunteer with the program. And when everything shut down, I didn't really know what to do with an assembly-based program where kids went, table to table. And so I hadn't reached back out to them. And then they still came, and they dedicated their Sundays through the entire pandemic to learning along with me about different topics related to special education. So they're very impressive girls.
And in your list of special education, some of the things that surprised me too is that I have a child with ADHD. And there, when you talk about kids with special needs, it runs the gamut from, kids who are on the autism spectrum who are at ADHD. I work with Sliding Doors, which is a dyslexic edge program. And so, but allergies is one that I had not ever considered before. And I'm like, wow, how come I overlooked that? The fact that there are children with severe allergies and asthma, and that's not a disability that you can see or that necessarily you meet someone and you understand that this is like a major life challenge for them.
Absolutely. I think my favorite part of this program is that we can use many topics, but the topics themselves are just a gateway to learning how to be empathetic to anybody. So these topics are important because they are highly represented in the schools, like food allergies, dyslexia, ADHD, and English language learning also, which was created by Clearview Elementary School and donated to the program. But once they go through this experience, it's like a circuit in the gym where you build empathy muscles. They learn how to take the knowledge that they've gained, how to shift perspectives from putting themselves in the place of somebody else, and then using that to brainstorm ideas on how they can help. So we help them build skills on how they can be a good friend. And in that case, we motivate action of inclusion and not just the increase of empathy.
I think that's really important too, because a lot of times, I mean, I am a child of the 60s and 70s. So if you had children in your classroom who didn't read as well, I don't even know that we had special education back then in rural Southwest Virginia. You just understood that some kids were slower or they struggled more. And yet, as students, we had no lens, no architecture, no framework to understand how to support our classmates. So we didn't. And I look back on that and think we could have done so much more to have made our classmates feel more included instead of excluded. And that's what I love the most about this program is that you hear a lot in this day and age about social emotional learning being important in schools, but a lot of people are like, what does that mean? And this is right in that space.
This crosses a lot of spaces. As I've gone through this program, and I initially was thinking of it as empathy building, um, fostering inclusion. But as I've looked into bullying prevention programs, which we do not bill ourselves as a bullying prevention program, I realized that we do cover some of the risk and protective factors of bullying prevention programs. And I think if this program is done well, that it does help in that space as well. But what I was thinking when you were speaking is that sometimes just kids knowing the why does a child behave a certain way? Why does a child stumble over their words? Why might a child have a reaction to a loud noise? So I teach them to be mini detectives in a way. So we learn why certain things happen, and then we try to understand what that might be like. So I don't simulate the disabilities necessarily. So food allergy is a great example. We're not going to simulate having an allergic reaction, but we definitely can put them in the place of being in a restaurant and trying to order a meal. So we have a very fun activity where kids come to the table, and this young student, also from Flores, named Lauren, developed a beautiful menu, children's menu for us. And we asked the kids, like, who likes hamburgers and who likes French fries, and really engage them. And once they place their order, we have them turn over their paper plate and they find out that they have a food allergy profile. And we talk through, well, can you still have what you just ordered? Or do you need to ask some clarifying questions? Do you need to reveal your personal information to a stranger? Do you need to ask things about how it was prepared or how it was cooked? So they really get a sense of what it means to try to order out at a restaurant.
And that's a great real world example.
Mhm.
My niece visited with her little boy this past fall, and he had a lot of food allergies. And she was just like, okay, he's allergic to peanuts and he's allergic to dairy and no cheese and no milk. And I'm like, okay, that's good. I'm glad you told me because I'd rather be prepared and like, but this is just the world we live in. And it should be like a normal thing for people to feel like I need to explain something to you. And in both children feeling comfortable in explaining that they have a certain limitation and the people hearing it and saying, well, thank you for telling me that. And so I just love the fact that your students are all getting a taste of being both the person who learns how to accommodate
Yes.
and make space, as well as putting themselves in the shoes of the person who's in a position of having to in some way explain or reveal or discuss something that's a challenge for them. I've just never, to me, this is something I don't think my children ever had. They're all in their 30s. My children never had in school, and it would have been so helpful for them.
Yes, I definitely think that that moment where they put themselves, when they realize they can't order the food, for example, it's really crucial on that path towards empathy. So knowledge alone isn't going to do it. And even shifting perspectives alone won't do it. But then brainstorming the action pieces, having all three components together, I think is what makes this a long lasting thing and helps kids think about what they can actually do. So following that same food allergy example, after we discuss the restaurant scenario, we bring it back into the school situation and talk about the isolation that kids can feel if they are separated at a different table. And so what can kids do to keep their friends safe is very important. Field trips, parties, but how can they include that friend so that they're not alone at the table?
Oh, and probably the greatest trauma in school occurs in the cafeteria, in the lunchroom about who sits with whom. I don't know. That is the most universal experience that I think anyone who's ever been in school can remember, and not just remember, but remember how they felt
Mhm.
about situations in which they were excluded or
Right.
felt alone or felt shut out from the cool kids or whatever. And I'm glad that you're bringing this up because most of us tend to move on with our lives and forget how we felt. And we should, because that's what empathy is all about. Empathy is about what we feel and the memories of what we feel. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk further with Margaret Behrns, who is the founder and director of Walk in My Shoes.
Do you love sports? Then you should know about STEM. Because maximizing nutrition, analyzing peak muscle performance, calculating the perfect shot, and more are all made possible by science, technology, engineering, and math. In fact, there are more careers than ever in sports science. So if you have a passion for sports, then think about getting involved in STEM and improve everyone's game on and off the field. Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, my love, my love, she keeps me warm. 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 She keeps me warm.
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
Love is kind. Love is patient.
You ready for the surprise?
Resuming moments like these starts with protecting our kids against COVID-19 and dangerous new variants.
Oh, you miss him.
Get the latest facts by visiting getvaccineanswers.org and speaking to your pediatrician or healthcare provider.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we're talking with Margaret Behrns. She is the director and the founder of Walk in My Shoes, which is a program, a curriculum designed to help children develop empathy for their classmates, for people who may struggle with disabilities, both seen and unseen. So thank you so much, Margaret, for being here because this is such an interesting discussion. And I know that you have mentioned that books, you mentioned in the first segment that there's some pre-reading activities and preparing children for the circuit of activities that they go through. It seems to me there's a lot more books on the market right now that are very specific about being inclusive, about representing children of every description, and talking about situations that are common, but are not certainly classic literature from my day. So tell us about some of the books that are used.
Absolutely. I have them behind me, as you can see, some of my favorites. I love Just Ask, which encourages children not to be intimidated by people who are different and to learn about them and to ask questions. And Jordan Christian has The Boy Who Couldn't Speak Yet, which talks about his journey with apraxia. And he's just an absolutely wonderful advocate for children with apraxia. And then one of my favorites is called My Perfect Cupcake, which models wonderful coping skills in a little boy who realizes that with his food allergies, he can't have this or that or all his favorite things, and the way that he responds to this diagnosis and really rallies his entire class around making sure that the food at the parties can be enjoyed by all makes that one of my favorite books to share with students and with kids.
No, those are great books. My sister had food allergies as a child and couldn't have wheat. And so I can remember a birthday cake my mother made with rice flour, applesauce, and raisins. And that was like probably 1963, 1964. Now it's a little more common and you can talk openly about food allergies and people know to read the packages. And like you said, people know to ask questions. And so I love the fact that this has become mainstream now. So what are some of the other activities? When you say a circuit, can you describe some of the activities in the gym as the kids go around?
Sure. So I have about 13 activities for third through sixth graders at the moment, and generally schools will select 6. Now, during the pandemic, the schools who have been able to run the program have done a smaller version where they will choose 2 or 3 and they will have them in classrooms. So each classroom has an activity and it's just like within the class cohort stays together so that of course, everybody's trying to be super careful. But originally, the way the program ran was like a circuit in the gym or the cafeteria where kids would have the ability to learn about ADHD and do that station and then switch to fine motor, dyslexia, English language learner, movement disorders, etc. So they will go around and by the time they left that event, which could be as little as 45 minutes, they had practiced this empathy building progression several times and they can take that with them forever. So I feel like it packs a really powerful punch in a short amount of time and it's super flexible. Schools choose what grades they want to run it with, how many kids, when, like usually December is a popular time because it's Inclusive Schools Week, but it can be run at the end of, all of the testing when there's that open day in June or in the afternoons during an assembly slot, if there is one. Really, I work with the schools very closely to tailor it to what they need. So that if they say to me, I have a hallway, I have 2 classrooms, I have parent volunteers, I will work it so that they can run it with the resources, the time, the space, and the people that they have.
Well, that's great. I mean, I think flexibility is important and having enough volunteers too. I work with a program called Grand Involve. We put retired older adults in the classrooms of Title I elementary schools. And so our classroom volunteers are often asked to do special events like book fairs or, field days and that sort of thing. And having enough hands on deck is really important to make these events work. So you have designed an event that's going to take place on June the 12th in Herndon that invites for the first time the public to experience this curriculum, which I think is very exciting. You've never opened it just to whoever's interested. So tell us a little bit about that event on the 12th.
Absolutely. We're really excited about this, especially since schools really haven't gone back fully to doing assemblies. We wanted to make it available to any child, whether their school had the program or not. We're also making it open to teachers who want to come and check the program out and possibly bring it back to their school. So we have, I think, 30 passes for teachers if they want to come. And it's June 12th at the Open Door Presbyterian Church in Herndon, which very graciously is donating the space for us to hold this event. And we have some local businesses helping us out so that we can get t-shirts and things like that for the volunteers. And we are going to showcase a couple of things. We have a new activity that's going to be showcased on the importance of accessible buildings. So if you want to know how we teach young children about the importance of things like ramps, please come to our event so you can see how we creatively bring it down to their level so that they walk away being prepared to advocate for people who need things like ramps to access fun stores.
I think that's really important too, because I think once you plant the seed, the kids will start to see things. They'll notice where there's ramps. They're going to notice buildings that don't have ramps. I noticed that my husband and I noticed that too. When we walk into buildings and we're like, oh, this is a great location, except that there's no access if somebody, is in a wheelchair or a walker or a cane. This would be too hard, all these steps. And so I think it's wonderful for children to start noticing their environment. And this is an interesting part of your program too, is the environment that, people who have whatever range of disabilities or challenges, the environment can be adapted if that's a priority for people to understand how to adapt environments to make it more friendly for more people. So explain a little bit about that.
Well, I'd like to point out a book that's for young adults, not really for young children, but I read a book called Show Me a Sign. And it was written by a deaf woman about a community where deafness was the norm and everybody knew sign language. And I think it really brings home how is it the disability or is it the environment? Because if you live in an environment where people can communicate and there are no barriers, then the disability is not a disability. It's just a difference. And I love that book for really making just really showcasing what it can be like if you change the environment and how it's really about the barriers to the person and not the person that has a disability.
And I think people have gotten more attuned because of people with cognitive processing disabilities, people who are on the autism spectrum, like you had mentioned, loud noises, bright lights, too many distractions, or different kinds of things that are disruptive or disturbing. And so I've noticed that there are movie theaters that have showings that are specifically for people who have sensory issues. Same with theater productions. I love the fact a theater company, I think it's a Next Stop Theater, will have a production and it will be specifically for people with sensory issues. So I love the fact that if you look around and you really start paying attention, it's not just in schools, it's everywhere. All of us can create environments that adapt to more people being included in the things that we're trying to do.
Yep, and that's really all it's about. It's very simple. Some of our takeaway messages at these activities are as simple as just because someone struggles with reading doesn't mean they're not smart, right? So like we do bring this down to where kids can walk away with things that they can keep. It's right at their level.
No, I love the fact that you're introducing it so early, because these are the formative years where our worldviews really are shaped, how we see the world, let's say K through 3, and I love the fact that, circle time, for instance, in the morning, when you sit on the rug in circle time, and the kinds of things you talk about which tend to be more social, emotional than they are like the academics that you're doing reading, writing, and arithmetic. And these things that you're introducing into the school help the children to be able to have a vocabulary. I think that's really important too.
Mhm.
How can children talk about things they don't understand if no one gives them the vocabulary to put descriptions, definitions around what they're experiencing?
So it's a good thing that you mentioned that, because I almost forgot to say that another thing that's being showcased at this event is for the first time, some activities for the younger age groups. So up until now, we've been focused on 3rd through 6th grade. And I started working at a fabulous preschool, and my experiences there have guided me to how I can take these concepts down to a younger age. And so some of the books that you see behind me, I use as jumping off points for discussion. And then I include like a little craft and just bring the kids along so that even at that age, they can understand. And the discussions I've had with my students at the preschool have really been unbelievable, what they understand and what they can walk away with, and also how incredibly motivated they feel to be that person who brings, for example, that cupcake that is accessible to all, that cupcake that everybody can have. So I am excited about starting these activities for the younger ages.
Well, I'm excited too because, the saying goes, you must be carefully taught. And what we learn in life is what we're taught by our teachers, by our families, by the communities we live in. And so when you prioritize inclusion, when you prioritize empathy with the very youngest children, then they grow up internalizing that that is the way it should be. Look around and figure out how to bring more people in. Look around and figure out someone else's story, even if it's something that's not apparent or that you don't understand. So I'm going to encourage everyone to come to your event on June 12th, especially educators. You've got these passes. If you want this in your school, the June 12th event, they can go to your website to register, and you do need to register for this event.
Yes.
So thank you, Margaret. This has been enlightening. I have loved every minute of this, and I wish you every success in expanding Walk in My Shoes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And this is what you need to know.